Okay, so we're in our study on Mark 11:1 through 12:12. And the reason why we're going over into chapter 12 is because that's the whole passage. The chapter divisions were created about the time of the Protestant Reformation, so they have nothing to do with the actual Bible. Most of the time they're wrong, sometimes they're right. So you have to look at what happens in the beginning of the next chapter or the end of the previous chapter to see if those are part of what's being told. In this case, it is. Now we're on the second visit to the temple and the second visit to the fig tree. We covered the Hosanna entrance and the transfer of power to Jesus, the end of the old covenant, and that transfer of power to Jesus gives him the power to make a new covenant. And then we have the first visit to the temple and the first visit to the fig tree, where he curses the fig tree for not producing fruit from the time that he sees the fig tree to the time that he arrives at it. And it should have, because whenever he commands something to do something, it does it. He commanded the winds and the waves to be still, and they were amazed at that he had power over them. Well, he has power over the fig tree too. The fig tree is able to produce the figs like that. And you say, Ron, fig trees can't produce figs that fast. Well, evidently they can, because Jesus expected it to happen. Who are you to say that they can't happen that fast? Because you took a botany class? Or because you've never seen it happen? Maybe you weren't watching close enough. Let's go to the second visit of the temple of verse 15. That says, "So they came to Jerusalem. Then Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple." Doesn't say what they bought and sold here. "And overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves." So now we get more specific. He drove out everyone who was buying and selling in the temple. And this comes right in with what I've been complaining about with false teachers based on the Holy Spirit's testimony through Peter. 2 Peter 2:3 about false teachers. "For covetousness by feigned words they will merchandise you." They will merchandise those they're supposed to be ministering to. This is the temple. This is the house of prayer, where ministry goes on to God. And you have people in there buying and selling. Buying and selling in the temple of God. And you wonder why, at the end times, the beast, aka, literally says, the little hunted game animal, will set up a system where no one can buy or sell without the mark of the little hunted game animal, the beast, mark of the beast. Buying and selling is very important to the enemy. Very important. That whole system is very important to the enemy. Because through the system of buying and selling, the enemy can terrorize you, making you think that you can't get what you need to live. And yet we know from Jesus specifically that that is a lie. So it's an absolute lie. God provides for us. God's the one who stiffens us to be able to turn, as he says in Matthew 6. We had a lesson on that. That's the literal translation of it. So let's keep going here. "So he came to Jerusalem, he went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves." Doves were used for sacrifice. "And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught, saying to them, 'Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations?'" Notice he says for all nations, for all ethnicities. All ethnicities, not just Jews. "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of thieves." Thieves? Aren't they doing legitimate buying and selling? They've made it into a den of thieves. Why would he say that? Isn't that false accusation? Isn't that what it is? I got a little latte this morning. Buying and selling. Is a false accusation by Jesus to refer to them as thieves? It's a den of thieves. How are they stealing from the people? Well, what are they doing? They're selling things to the people, when the people should not be coming to buy things, but to minister to God their prayers. So, these men are stealing from God the ministry that is due him. Even if you just look at the amount of time it takes to buy and sell, that amount of time it takes to buy and sell there in the temple, they could be praying instead. Or you could look at it from another angle, that they think that if they buy these things, that they don't have to pray. Or they don't have to pray as much. They can offer a dove instead. They can do whatever instead of praying. It's a house of prayer for all nations, and they've robbed God of those prayers that would have been offered during that time that they were buying and selling, and maybe even robbed him of more prayers by the people thinking they didn't have to spend so much time in there since they are giving a dove or money or whatever. It's a den of thieves. They're stealing from God. It's not stealing from the people they're selling to. They're stealing from God. It's supposed to be a house of prayer, but it's a den of thieves. It's supposed to be a place where people are coming to pray, but instead, these men are coming in to try to steal from God. And the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him. For they feared him, because all the people were astonished at his teaching. I have the same reaction here. I get people who are afraid of my teaching. One guy, under a video that was made about me, against me, one of some that have been made against me, and I went and I read some of the comments. I didn't attack him. I didn't criticize him. I didn't make a video against him. I let it be as it was. And one person who had been over at this channel, our channel, and had been banned from the channel. Actually, I don't think he was banned. I think I just didn't publish his comments. But anyway, he was hurt, and it was only 1 or 2 comments that we exchanged. And there was nothing significant there. He wanted to teach me something, right? And I told him he was wrong about it, and he didn't like that. So he tried even harder to teach me something. And so I didn't publish it. So he goes over to this other channel, starts complaining about me, saying all kinds of nasty things, anything he could. He doesn't know me, I don't know him. And he's going over there, trying to undermine my authority back over here, with anyone over there who might be coming over here as well and listening to my videos. There were some. Some of our subscribers were subscribed over there. As soon as he published that video, they all unsubscribed from his channel because they knew he was wrong. He was right up to then. Every one of them that he was making was correct. He was hitting all the false teachers and false prophets, most of them in the third world. But when he got to me and he put me up, those who were subscribed knew flat out this guy was wrong. So they immediately unsubscribed. These men fear what I teach. And this guy who went over there complaining, he's not the only one, there were some others. He says, you listen to him long enough, he makes sense. One of you, I read your comment over there, one of you said something to this effect that, of course it would be that way because he's armed with the truth. I think he said we're armed with the truth and you're not. So of course, if you listen long enough, it will convince you. But the fact that you don't want to be convinced of the truth means you don't love the truth and you fear him and his teachings. For they feared him because all the people were astonished at his teaching. I'm not the only one who teaches where people are astonished and afraid. I know some others who are that way as well. When evening had come, he went out of the city. So that was his second visit to the temple. His first visit was just looking around, looking at things. His second visit was where he did like he did with the fig tree, where he cursed it. He overthrew these things, but in this case, he was cleansing the temple. So he didn't curse the temple in this case. When evening had come, he went out of the city. Now in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. From the roots, it was dried up the next morning. So it was one day, because it was in the morning before. He'd gotten up in the morning, they saw the fig tree, he cursed it. Next morning, they come by again, it was dried up from the roots. And Peter, remembering, said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away. Okay, that's where we stop today. So with the fig tree, this second visit, it was validated. Jesus' curse was validated on this second visit. So when he goes into the temple the first time and he looks around, that's when he knew what he needed to do. He had decided what he needed to do to those men who were turning God's house from a house of prayer into a den of thieves where they're robbing God. He knew what he had to do. He had decided in his mind already what he was going to do. So it's akin to the curse to the fig tree. Then when he comes the second time and he teaches this and he drives these men out, turns over their chairs, doesn't allow anyone to come through with their things to sell. This is the activation of the curse on those men. Jesus is directly activating it. And when they come back by the fig tree the next morning, they see that the curse had been activated on it while they slept. It was dried up from the roots all the way. You got to be very, 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 very careful. You got to produce fruit and in the right time. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart. Remember to subscribe down below and like the video and share it on your Facebook and other social media. And then make a comment, whether a question or a comment. We read all of them and we try to respond to all. Get on over to our website, The Rooted Word, and start reading the translation and also the articles we've posted. It's at therootedword.com, therootedword.com. And may the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.